Thank you, Jane. All right, let's call to order. Thanks everybody for coming tonight. We are going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
You want to start, Mark?
Sure. Everyone, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Announcement of any reportable action taken in closed session. There was none. Can I have approval for the open session agenda? Motion to approve.
I motion that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Submitted.
All those in favor?
I have a comment before we start. I have a concern that I just wanted to share with the public. Tonight's meeting is unfortunately marred by a slight lack of transparency. The webpage with the information required by the Brown Act was down for at least 24 hours or more. I know Jason referred, I talked with our Dr. Yamashiro, he said it was a problem with the software vendor. I think that's accurate. The public has not had the access to the date, time, location, agenda, or materials for this board meeting for at least 24 hours. I did not have online access to the agenda and supporting materials on Sunday and Monday. Those are the days I reserve for thorough study of the meeting materials. I want to thank Jane for providing me with a paper copy of the materials today. We must conduct our school district's business with full transparency, and Sunshine encourages public discussions on important community issues. Moreover, I believe more people may have attended this important meeting if they had access to the information online as required by the Brown Act. In the future, let's come up with a backup plan to ensure online access to meeting information, agendas, and materials so this doesn't happen again. Please.
So noted. Okay, public comment on items on open session agenda. I have a card here from Peter Alexander.
Someone just speak from here?
Please.
Okay.
Is this-
Wait.
Time for there.
Yes. This is a public comment on an item on the open session agenda.
Okay, well, this is addressing the teachers. And so bear with me, you know, I got a bone to pick with teachers, I tell you.
Excuse me, is this about something that's on the agenda itself?
Yes, the teachers part.
Okay. Thank you.
May I continue?
Please.
I have a bone to pick with teachers, I tell you, quite true, which may go a long way to explaining why we're all so blue. Somehow we're all on the stage with an unscripted play. Wake up, all you teachers, it's time to teach a new way. How well educated are we? Whoever sets the promised course must be one with the force. The problems seem overwhelming, truly a Gordian knot. No one could untie. But Alexander the Great was presented with this riddle. He took his sword and sliced it right down through the middle. Our mandate in fulfilling fate calls for us to lay down the sword, ceasing the industry of the slaughterhouse and oil. That's how we stand up and how we become royal. I am Peter, yes I am, set to claim the promised land, via the 40-day freedom strike, almightily commanded. Being hell-bent and heaven sent, imperative indeed in ceasing all greed, freeze-framing the economy has been prophesized. We now withdraw our consent. Everyone off the fence. Pay no more mortgages, pay no more rents. No labor, no schools, no longer the system's fools. For we learned in school of Nelson Mandela for good reason. From prison to the presidency, his wife left him for his treason. American students know nothing of our 3 warrior champions, all in prison, each over 40 years. Now the world walks a true trial of tears. Martin Luther King said, if one man's wrongfully incarcerated, so are we all. Mumia Abu-Jamal's been down 40 years. He's innocent. I know that because I was there. Dr. Jeffrey McDonald, the Green Beret, blew the whistle on Bush's heroin that day. They murdered his pregnant wife and 2 daughters, pinned it on him. He's been down 46 years. The students don't know these. Leonard Peltier, the one that Robert Redford did a documentary on. down 43 years, innocent. He's part of the prophecy. For in his prison cell, he represents the 500-year indigenous resistance worldwide, and in his cell is the spirit of the U.S. Constitution, which was a gift from a matriarchal society called the Iroquois. And we're not under the Constitution. Since Lincoln, we've been under martial law. And so,
Excuse me, Peter, normally we give about 2 to 3 minutes. Is this going to be?
well, I'm trying to go 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the prophecy of the 40 strike has been denied. So through me was commanded the fires, and 4 days later they began, and they have not stopped since. I call it the iron rod of God. It's not going to stop. And since people are still more interested in nonsensical things, things that mean nothing, as opposed to the 3 heroes we have in our prison that can be released by the most powerful people on the planet if we get together and be standing on granite with the freedom strike where we withdraw our consent from an economy and system that's screwing us all. The mother of all boycotts be the true call. But since people don't believe and they want to continue to serve those who deceive, the lawyers and the bankers that maintain all this corruption and oil tankers, so now it's been commanded that the Oakland Bay Bridge into the bay will be remanded. And so it is. I'll say this. Someone said we need to teach our children to have compassion for the pain of others, not to dismiss it or trivialize it. Shaddai, Shaddai, Adonai, Shaddai. Let us be his children. Charles Schultz was a spiritual man. He portrayed his kids all 55 years to have something in common with Gandhi, Einstein, Jesus, Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, Coretta Scott King. They were vegans. And that's the path that avoids the wrath. And so I'll finish by telling you this. That the U.S. economy was shut down. It was fast and fierce. It was beautiful. As the blade hit the ground, the veil it did pierce. The rainbow warriors of spirit freeze-framed all corruption. And so too, all greed we did clear. The time for half measures and talk is over. We are the most powerful people on the planet, and all our lives we've been deceived and misled. There is no such thing as the IRS and Fed. I could tell you in 1,000 ways. Cease our participation in this system, and let's take this nation to its highest station, because otherwise we will be watching the Oakland Bay Bridge fall. I am that I am, and this be the command from on high, and this highness resides in each heart. So I tell you truly, start. Blessings.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I think we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right. Announcements and special items. Superintendent's report. Dr. Yamashiro.
I think I just want to highlight the great start to the school year at all of our school sites. Last time we met, I was talking about the return and getting ready for kids and the hard work that teachers were doing. I've been really impressed out of the school sites, a lot of smiling kids, a lot of hardworking teachers. As you're well aware, we had construction going up right until the last minute, including even as we had kids coming back. And everybody worked together, worked around the problems that were there, ran great classrooms. And we've just had a lot of positive feedback. It's not just that people are getting through it, it's the way that people are working together around it and the positive energy that's at the school site. So that's number one on our list. Appreciation to the teachers, appreciation to the maintenance staff. We've had a lot of custodians and maintenance coming. They came in and did overtime on weekends that have just been working tirelessly during the day to clean up as fast as possible. Also a big shout out to the Miller Creek staff for having a great back to school night. Last week, that was fantastic. We look forward to the elementary back to school nights tomorrow night, which should be wonderful. And I think that's where we focus on. So.
All right. Back to school night was great. We get to go sit in our kids' classes at Miller Creek. It was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed that. Okay, 5.2, resolution number 2018-1903, supporting the designation of district representatives and authorization to file applications for the school facility program.
This is extremely important.
Yes.
Because we want to get some of the state facilities grant money that the voters of California approved and that all districts can possibly be in line to get. We've been doing modernization projects. The modernization work that we've been doing is eligible for a state match, and we need to complete all of the forms and paperwork and things that are required to be able to get that match and get in line. And this allows us to do that, allows us to designate the company that we're working with to be able to submit on our behalf and work with that.
So, Are there any questions? This is all that money that's sitting there that
It's a resolution.
waiting for us.
Where is the draft of the resolution from? Who drafted it? Do you know?
The company, they came.
King, yeah,
It's standard, it's,
yeah.
Okay, so again, this is facilities money that the state has. It's been sitting there, and we're trying to get in line to get some of that, so. Okay, I guess it's a motion to, it's a resolution. So would this be a poll?
Board Member Shaw.
Aye.
Board Member Hansberger.
Aye.
Board Member Chaka.
Aye.
Board Member Takeman.
Aye.
Board Member Glickman.
Aye.
So moved, thank you. Okay, let's move on to the Dixie Teachers Association report.
Can you stop?
Right.
Wait, sorry, can you stop a second?
Yep.
Was there a motion on the table for that?
No.
No, we need a motion on the table for that.
Oh, good.
Actually, can someone motion, please?
Okay, motion before the poll.
I move that we approve resolution 2018-19-03.
second.
Okay, now,
Board Member Shaw.
here we go.
Aye.
Board Member Hansberger.
Aye.
Board Member Chaka.
Aye.
Board Member Takeman.
Aye.
Board Member Glickman.
Aye.
My miss, sorry. Okay, thank you. Now we'll go on to the DTA. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Wait there.
apologies.
No problem. waiting.
Thanks for being here, thanks for making it.
Thank you guys for having us
Nice to
as
see
always.
you.
So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Tara Costello. I'm a teacher, a special education teacher at Dixie Elementary this year, and I'm our Dixie Teachers Association Union President. So last year when we met and talked, we decided that it would be a really good thing for the district to have some input for the teachers at every meeting so that you guys could see kind of what's going on with all of us from a teacher perspective. So far the first couple of weeks have been going good. We got to share up, and I apologize for the last meeting not being able to be here with the setup and everything else, but things have been going really smoothly. It's been nice to see some of your presences on campus also. The teachers really appreciate that as they're getting to know the board and everyone else. They've really felt that. There's been a lot of changes this year, as there were last year as well. And the teachers are feeling that, but feeling really a lot of support and positivity with everything. So we're having our first official union meeting next Tuesday to meet and kind of get everything rolling for the year. A lot of new teachers, a lot of new members, and everyone's feeling really good and positive about the year. I've got my vice president over there, Mary Krause, representing the middle school as well, which is lovely because we're getting more and more people involved. And we truly feel that having that strong union is going to give a stronger district for all of us. So thank you guys as always for your support. And hopefully we're going to continue to have a good year here. That's all I've got for this time. So next time a little more thorough.
Well,
So
thank you, thank you.
no problem. Thanks for having me as always. Yeah.
Okay. So, we move on to public comment. Oh, I'm sorry, budget. I was jumping ahead there. Budget and financial matters. The budget summary, Tanya.
Okay, so this is just a budget summary of what we're closing the year. And unaudited will be coming back. We need to schedule another meeting for the unaudited.
You have to pull your mic up.
Oh. We have to schedule another meeting, is that good? We
Yeah,
have
they
to,
can't hear in the back of
okay. My voice doesn't transmit well. So we'll need to reschedule another meeting for the unauditeds to come back. But this is just a summary to give you guys an idea of where we are closing the year. So and this is kind of small because there's a lot of data here. So the one column, the very first column, there's the unrestricted side of the budget and the restricted side of the budget, and then a total combined total. And the unrestricted side of the budget, you can see that you have each reporting period is listed there. So you have the June adopted budget, first interim, second interim, and then how we close the year. So the positive negative difference column is the difference between the most recent budget that was approved, which would be second interim, and the unaudited actuals from where we close at the end of the year. So most of this you can see is we had some increase in revenues. We had expenditures that were less than what we had projected. And in total, the bottom line, the summary of this is that we came out a little bit better than what we had expected at second interim. And I'll have much more detail for you when we do the unaudited. But as you can see as well, down here in the yellow, in the bottom, you can see that our reserve went from the beginning of the year to 5.1, and we closed the year at 8.0. So we're back up closer towards that 10% that we want to be at. So that's just kind of a summary of what's in the budget right now. Does anybody have any questions on any of that?
So the jump from the 5.4 to 8, what's the major cause is the increase in revenues, LCFF?
It's the LCFF increase in revenues and then the one-time revenues that were in the budget.
And does this take into account the parcel tax increase for local?
No,
Okay.
that's it, that would
That'll
be.
be next year.
Yes, in next year's budget, yes.
And so our next update will be, are we gonna have, when will those figures be available? Maybe at the next board meeting?
Well, yes, at the next board meeting, which we need to request a meeting for either the 18th or the 25th, I think it was, either one of the next Tuesdays
Got it.
after next week.
Okay.
Historically, we've done the second and the fourth as the sequence, so when the fourth works, that would be the normal, should have been out there as an option, right? So we usually do either the second or fourth Tuesday.
Well, this is the
Yeah,
first
and-
because of the holiday.
Right,
Yeah.
it's in general, through the month, it's been the second and the fourth is our traditional sequence.
Right, and it was scheduled to have a meeting for the 4th, and we tried very diligently to get the budget completed, the unaudited completed for the end of the year for that meeting, and it was just taking out 7 days for us was just a little bit too much, so that's why we're asking for either the 18th or the following Tuesday after that.
Yeah, the following Tuesday would be great.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think it's the 25th?
Yeah, so are you also gonna provide, without the one-time funding, what our second and third year forecast will be? Or are you just sticking with our same year? 'Cause at this point, we're not gonna count on that money next year. What's it looking like for what we're reporting to the county?
Well, the unauditeds have what's actuals.
Yeah.
So for the future, it would be at first interim, which closes on October 31st, and that report would come to the board in December. So, but as, just in general, for the multi-year projection, you would have the one-time revenues in the current year in 18-19, and in the multi-years, that would be removed, because we don't, at this point, we don't have any
Right, but
future
I
projection
think
of
we'd
that.
like to see what we're holding restricted in our second and third year as well, consistently. Since we're starting to teeter towards 5% and now 8%, we'd like to see the 3-year run, right? So we'd like to see second and third year, even audited or even final, right after October 31st. I think it should be part of a regular report at this point until we can get back up to 10%.
This report, though, is the unaudited actual for last year. When we do the first interim budget right after that, October 31st, we do a 3-year, there is a
Right.
3-year projection.
And that's going to be
That'll be in the first interim. Unaudited, it's not any type of a projection, it's just, this is how we close the year.
Got it.
Right.
Okay. Thank you for putting that together.
Uh-huh.
I know there's a lot going on. It's not an action item, so then we'll move on to public comment on items not specified on the agenda. How many cards do we have? I'd like to kind of regulate how much time we're gonna be in this part of the, and while she's counting, I just wanna, there's a couple more cards out in the audience. Thanks, Ms. Bender. Rules of governance in the Brown Act mean that we can't respond to you when you come and talk. So don't take that as personal. We're here to listen today. Okay, so and we're going to time. So we're going to see how many cards that we have and 21. My daughter's right over here. Okay, so what we'll do in we'll limit it to 2 minutes. If you can be shorter, that's great. Tracy, could you time? Would that be okay?
Sure.
And so we'll have you come up and talk. And if people are repetitive, if they're already covering what you want to cover, maybe just give them the time and let's in the interest of time we can get through it. So anyway, So,
I have a suggestion,
Mhm.
if I can make one. I wanted to suggest for maybe ground rules that I could just share with the board. One, speak to the issue. Two, keep it civil. We all have an important view to share. Three, listen to others. Four, be courteous and respectful of others.
thanks. All right. Yeah, we're gonna do 2 minutes, and again, if you don't need the 2 minutes, then that'll be fine.
No, any audience.
Yeah. Okay, Noah Griffin.
Sure. Let's make it go shorter.
Good evening. My name is Noah Griffin. I reside in Tiburon. I've either lived or worked in Marin County since 1975, and I've raised my 4 children there. I've been accused of being an outside agitator, but in the words of Dr. King, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I speak to the issue of changing the name of the Dixie School District. It is an anachronistic throwback to an era of slavery, bondage, and human suffering. By maintaining the name, we do a disservice to the district, the county, and the children we seek to educate. It is disingenuous to maintain the name Dixie as anything but synonymous with the Confederacy, and was acknowledged as such in the Dixie School Foundation's application for landmark status. The war is over. The Confederacy does not need an outpost in Northern California. My paternal grandfather, born in 1852, was enslaved at birth, as was the woman who was to become his wife. My maternal great-grandfather fought in the Civil War for the Union for the Kentucky 115th Regiment. The South lost. That chapter is closed. I do not deny their history, but there is no need to celebrate it, to honor it, or to memorialize it outside of a museum. Let that museum be the original schoolhouse with honest acknowledgement of the name's origin and what it stood for then and what it stands for now. There should be no pride in maintaining a name that brings pain to any segment of our community. Both my parents were educators. We are missing a teachable moment. Our children need to learn to neither trivialize nor dismiss the sensitivity of others, or worse, to become generationally numb to their pain. What better an opportunity than to stand up for Marin County values? Whose side are you on? Certainly the David Dukes and Donald Trumps of the world would be pleased in maintaining the status quo. But in the words of James Russell Lowell, new occasions teach new duties. Time makes ancient good uncouth. They must ever up and onward who would keep abreast of truth. Winds of change are sweeping the land. The name Dixie, Confederate statues, and flags are being retired as we speak. We in Marin are not special to ignore or think ourselves above doing our part to keep pace with the times. In the words of Abraham Lincoln, we cannot escape history. The fiery trial through which we pass will light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest generation.
Thanks.
Thank you.
For the edification of our board, could you please raise your hand if you're a voter in the Dixie District, please? Thank you. Okay.
Lisa Dory.
Hi, I'm Lisa Doring. I'm a 20-plus year resident of Marin County. And when we moved here, all the realtors told us this was the best district in the county. The widest curriculum, the best performing schools, and I think that's partly because you teach so many things. Math, science, art, all kinds of things. But I think another thing we're teaching children here is to honor, respect, and remember something that represents white supremacy, terrorism, and slavery. I think the name Dixie embodies and represents the Confederacy, and the Confederacy represents those things, racism, white supremacy in this country, and we need to take a look at that and hold hands with history and make a new change with something positive, choosing a better name for this wonderful school district. I think to do that would cause a more racially equitable outcome in this area and in this county. And so I ask you to do the right thing.
Nick Petrusula. Petrusella, sorry.
That's all right.
Apologies.
I've been called worse. I'd like to comment about the recent publicity regarding the Dixie School District. As a parent who's been in this district for 10+ years, I'm opposed to outsiders attempting to use their influence to change the name of our district. We have carried the district name for over 150 years, during which time the name has become synonymous with great administration, great teachers, and a great education. I have never heard one parent complain or make any type of connection between the name of our district and slavery. Additionally, I've never heard or seen any evidence of racism within our district. While there are many great things about the Dixie School District, we are not without our challenges. These challenges and the time it takes to address them should take precedent over the time, energy, and resources being wasted with the effort to change the district's name. What issues, you may ask? As a parent, here you go. How about the myriad of construction projects we have currently underway and in the future that are going to need managing? How about the vaping epidemic at Miller Creek? How about evaluating the new dress code that's been instituted? How about ensuring the massive turnover is going smoothly? How about keeping our school district for the residents of our district? How about weighing the desires of your constituents? If more kids want to take tech classes, add tech classes. Don't push them down to their second and third choices for their electives. After all, who's paying for the electives? It's those of us here in the district paying the parcel tax. I suggest to the board that they stay in their lane and act as trustees to the school district as they were elected to do, and eliminate creating controversy where none exists. Thank you.
Jessica Riley.
Hello, my name is Jessica Freilich. I didn't come with prepared remarks. Unlike many people here, I am a resident of the district. My son went to Mary Silvera, Dixie Elementary, and Miller Creek. All the time that my son was in school, we dutifully ran to Costco to buy school supplies for the classroom. We contributed hundreds of dollars every year to Can Do, and we voted for every single parcel tax, even now that our son is long since graduated from the district. But I have to tell you, and the reason that we've voted for all the parcel taxes is because we've entrusted, we have the feeling that the Dixie School Board are very good stewards of our tax money. But I have to tell you that if you guys spend one thin dime on this ridiculously stupid proposal, I am going to have to question whether you really need that money the next time you come up with another parcel tax. Thank you very much.
Tim Irish.
Hi, I am a resident of Dixie. Both my children attended. I guess I should have seen it. Camera.
Wherever you like.
We moved here from Alexandria, Virginia in 2007, and I found the name of my children's elementary school odd. Why would anyone name a school Dixie so far geographically and historically from the antebellum South, Dixie? It didn't make any sense, but it didn't take long for me to discover the sad truth behind the name. I'll admit that during my 13 years living in Alexandria, Virginia, I never considered the pain that those statues to fallen Southern soldiers must have caused the local African-American population, community. That all changed with Charlottesville. Just as our attitudes and awareness about sexual harassment changed with the allegations against Harvey Weinstein and the Me Too movement. Now we're, as they say, woke. And we should do all we can to eliminate racism, from changing names to removing statues. Some want to claim that there isn't any racism in our community, so we don't need to change the name. Well, I was shocked to read some of the comments to Bruce Anderson on Nextdoor, the local online community. I never in my life thought that I would see white people telling a black man what does and doesn't constitute racism. And the tone and anger of those posts was over the top. It was shocking. It showed me that we as a community have quite a ways to go racially. So I suggest that we change the name, if that's the one small step we can take. change the name, please. I can't change people's minds, but I can do this. Thank you.
Bruce Anderson.
Thank you for the introduction. Okay, my name is Bruce Anderson. I'm local, as you can tell. I moved here in 1986 with my 3-year-old son. In 1989, after attending a private kindergarten, we went to first grade at Dixie. My first day at Dixie School, I met Mr. Lohauser. I don't think he was a doctor at that time. I may be wrong, but I don't think he was yet a doctor. I asked him, this name, it doesn't make sense to me. I've been in this area. Why is this name here? At that time, he didn't have an answer, and he said, I'll get back to you. Since that time, 1989, even though you've heard things started in 1986, since that time, I've asked every Dixie official I've met, usually the first time I've met him. Mark, I met you when you approved when you guys voted on Jennifer to become a Dixie board member. I asked you at that meeting at Miller Creek about the Dixie name. Jennifer, I met you about a month later after you came back onto the board at a function at Dixie School as a dance or something. Dr. Lohauser introduced us together as I was talking to him about the Dixie name. Marnie, I probably asked you before you were elected, and I know I've talked to you since you've been elected to the position. Alyssa, same thing. I think I talked to you before you were elected, and I know I've said something to you since you've been elected. And Brad, I've asked you so many times and talked to you so many times about this, I think you avoid me.
I love you, Bruce.
I met Dr. Yashimiro last year at my grandson's 6th grade pre-opening day. I asked him. Pardon? I asked him about it too. So the last few years, the responses have been more open and considerate, some positive and some encouraging. Attitudes are changing rapidly in this country as the country wakes up to the oppression and non-exclusiveness of Confederate symbols and Confederate names and symbols. And that is the key, equity and inclusion. Each school is starting programs that I've heard. What better subject than the history of the district and how to increase inclusion? I'll skip down. I wrote a letter. I seriously did expect a response. I have not gotten a response from the letter that I wrote last meeting. In the letter, I asked the board recognize the facts about the name of the district and asked the board to take note of the symbolism of Dixie name and begin a process to change it. And I'll be back.
Thanks.
Dave Coors.
I have terrible handwriting.
Sorry about that.
I didn't go to school here. I'm a 10-year resident. I'm a 10-year resident of San Rafael, and I can read. So, what's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet. John S. McCain District, Barack Obama District, Ethel Siderman District, Justice District, Gary Giacomini District, Robin Williams District, Maria B. Freitas District, James Baldwin District, Peter Bear District, Miwok District, Steve Nestelzade. It was great. There are so many names that would bring out our best, consistent with the excellence of the school district. In terms of cost, I am sure you would be able to raise thousands of dollars for the necessary sign changes, stationary changes. The cost would be seriously, overwhelmingly defrayed. It would be a bold and wonderful move. Thank you.
David Curtis.
Dave, were you 94903 or 94901?
One.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
Yeah, but I'm just trying to keep a resident tally.
I know, but I have
Respect.
categories.
Is that a zip
Okay,
code?
thank you for all the name suggestions.
I'm David Curtis. I'm a parent to two students in the district. My daughter attended Valcedo, Dixie, and Miller Creek. Now she's at Terralinda, and my son's currently in Dixie. And when I first moved here, and someone told me the name of the school, I was also confused, and I was wondering why that name was so displaced from the Southern America. And I still can't explain it, and it doesn't make any sense to me. And like it or not, or if you're willing to pay for the change or not, that name pretty much only has negative connotations, so it's not helping us. If you're into branding, it's a terrible brand. So, even if you don't want to make it about racism, let's just come up with a better name that doesn't have all this negative baggage. And someone implied that we should leave the name because otherwise we're whitewashing history, and people are going to know that the Civil War happened. There are plenty of other opportunities to get that information. And right now I can't explain it to my kids really. Why is that? And the school sometimes cautions them and tells them, it's really okay, you should be proud of it and stuff. It's hard to be proud of that name. And we're going to pay for the change. It's not a money issue. Don't make it about that. And don't use that as an excuse. And I strongly support the change. And it should have happened a long time ago. And, let's just do it and move on to more important things. Thank you.
My name is Christopher Reeder. I've taught music in the district for the past 8 years, sorry, I can read, actually, it's in the name, and have been a teacher for 21 years. Our whole profession is based on the belief that knowledge transforms us for the better. And with evidence-based knowledge that the district's name is an indefensible artifact rooted in racist history, we have an opportunity to do better, to be better. It's our responsibility as educators. Hostile environments inhibit learning, and at the end of the day, this is about kids, the education they receive in our district, and fostering an inclusive environment in which all students feel welcomed and supported. And I'm going to talk about racial equity and restorative justice for a second. If, as frankly, a majority white district in a majority white county, we can evolve our understanding on this issue, it will send a powerful message to our students and neighbors. When our sisters and brothers who are people of color talk about the harm done, we need to sit with that and take it seriously and make a change. We talk about restorative justice with our students, right? And our responsibility to walk the talk. That's what restorative justice looks like. And for those of us who are troubled by the current political climate around the treatment of people of color and immigrants in this country, this is a thing we can do that will help. And there's a wider cultural context here. As people have mentioned, Confederate monuments are coming down all over the South. Last month, a school district in Alabama ended the practice of their band playing Dixie at football games. Alabama. And if South Carolina can take the Confederate flag off of their state house, us Californians can take Dixie off of our school letterhead. This is the perfect time to do this. We don't really need to wait for a more convenient time because the time is now. Thank you for your attention.
My name is Sherry Baccaria. I'm the orchestra teacher for the district, and I've been teaching here for 9 years. I don't live in the district, but I've been teaching here for 9 years. I got laid off in Livermore in 2008 when the recession happened. And when I was looking for names and I saw Dixie, I thought it was really strange. I lived in West Texas. I lived in Odessa, Texas. I could maybe see it happening there, although I wouldn't like it, but not here. I'm going to read a letter to you that was written to the Change the Name Committee from Mark Brilliant, who's the director of the UC Berkeley's American Studies program and professor of history. As far as I can tell, the research you provided me with is completely credible, standard fair historical stuff to demonstrate the connection between the Dixie Schoolhouse and, by extension, Dixie School District on the one hand, and the Confederate States of America during the Civil War on the other hand. It's hard to imagine that anyone in 1864, when the schoolhouse was constructed, would have thought Dixie referred to anything other than the CSA, Confederate States, as the sources you've unearthed confirm, including the recollection of James Miller's very own granddaughter. Sure, it would be nice to have something from James Miller himself, but I don't see any reason to doubt this bit of oral history testimony from Miller's granddaughter conveyed in the application to get the Dixie Schoolhouse added to the National Registry of Historical Places. Mrs. Light, who was James Miller's granddaughter, stated that her grandfather, not being a man to turn down a challenge named the building on a dare, Marin County in 1864 was hotly pro-Northern, and the fact that several gentlemen from the South had constructed the first schoolhouse prompted someone to dare James Miller to name the school Dixie, and so he did. More generally, I'm no expert on the etymology of Dixie, but from what I've read, and I'm sure you have too, the prevailing view seems to be that it originally comes from Dixon, as in the Mason-Dixon line, and refers to the territory south of the Mason-Dixon line. Later in 1859, the term was popularized in a minstrel song, which became the de facto national anthem of the Confederacy during the Civil War. Again, it defies the imagination to think that anyone in 1864 of all years would have thought Dixie referred to anything other than the Confederate States of America. Throughout the U.S., including the South, Confederate monuments are coming down. Dixie School District should follow these leads by changing its name. And if there's any doubt on what this name actually means, look up slave ships and look up Emmett Till and see those pictures of what they did to human beings. That's what the name represents to some of our brothers and sisters.
Howdy, my name is Jeff Durham, and you heard me say howdy. Perhaps I can offer a little bit of a perspective here. I am a parent of a Dixie student, and have been so for the past 4 years or so. It's kind of interesting. My daughter and I share only one thing in common. Well, I guess we share, besides family, and that is we both grew up in Dixie. I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, where the name really meant something, and I could see its effects on the ground. I grew up in the era of busing, when I could see the effects of this mindset on the ground. Segregation, absolutely. Confederate, and I use the word pride in quotes, I could see the effects of this on the ground in people's hearts directly. In this world, we don't often have a chance to do something good immediately in the present moment. This is our chance, and this is the time. I don't want my darling daughter to grow up in the kind of Dixie I grew up in. Please make that happen. Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening. It's good to see all of you. My name is Jonathan Eldridge. I am a resident. I have the right zip code. My daughter goes to Vallecito, where she's a kindergartner. We've lived in the district for a while now, and I work in Marin County, also in education. And as an administrator, I appreciate the difficult task that boards and administrators have. I'm also here on behalf of my wife, who is at home with our daughter this evening. She actually has a PhD in sociology and teaches at a college. And a lot of what she teaches is about symbolic racism, which is also not coincidentally known as symbolic violence. And for those of us with privilege, that probably seems a little over the top. But that's because we have privilege. As I would also like to say, I have a degree in history, and so I appreciate the history lesson we just received, because I also learned about Dixie, and Whistling Dixie being the anthem for the Confederacy, and the heart of Dixie actually referring to the Confederate States. And whether or not Dixie School District is named for that really isn't the point. The point is that that is what it is commonly associated as. There's a reason that parents don't name their kids Adolf. There's a reason that the restaurant that some of us, I'm sure, as kids went to, Sambo's, doesn't exist anymore. It's because it's inappropriate. It's inappropriate because it's hurtful, and because I think we finally learned that. I also want to say for a moment that slavery was not only about owning people as property and committing atrocities on them. It was also about the intentional decision to keep those people uneducated. And if that doesn't speak to the importance of this issue in this school district, then I don't know what does. That should not be lost on any of us, and it should make this decision a morally obvious one. But what about tradition? What about it's been this way? What about we've lived with this for years? That's not really what it means to us. Well, I don't think any of us want to go back to any of the traditions we knew in education, and I think I'm probably of roughly the same age of a lot of people in the room. And when I was growing up, we didn't know the term homophobia. We just perpetuated it on every kid who didn't act the way we thought they should. Racist names, formal and informal segregation. So I'll close with this. To those of us with privilege, and I certainly, most certainly, am one of those people, we need to check that and understand the insidious nature of the tradition. And tradition is also code in many places for white supremacy, and it shouldn't be here. We should be better and care more about our neighbors and children than to make privileged excuses and fail to act. Because after all, as we all know in education, where our kids are watching, inaction is powerful action and makes clear our values. Thank you.
So my name's Deborah Taub, and I am also a resident of Marinwood, not a paid outside agitator, not at all. So I'm a 20-plus year resident of Marinwood. My son attended Dixie School, Miller Creek Middle School, and Terralinda High School. He then went on to attend and graduate from UC Berkeley, and he's living downtown in San Diego. We moved to this area because of its natural beauty and excellent public schools. Throughout the years my son was in school here, we deeply appreciated and took part in what we found to be a very caring and child-focused community. I talked to my son recently because I think you need to hear from former students who attended Dixie School and what they feel about this issue. And he said, to quote, "As someone who attended Dixie School, I had no clue what the name Dixie was associated with. Having a school named Dixie basically teaches kids that the name isn't worth learning about or caring about. I'm ashamed of having gone to a school with that name. It was so contradictory to what the school stands for. The name conditions kids to have a false understanding of its meaning and fails to nurture the curiosity and motivation to understand the harm it creates." We want our children, and I think I can speak for all of us in this room, that we want our children to gain through education a full range of knowledge about self, others, and the world. That's not very controversial. And yet, in keeping the Dixie name, we are, however inadvertently, teaching and passing on a legacy of indifference and denial about the meanings and implications of the name that so many people have already spoken about. And despite, and I would add because of the impacts of segregation in our county, in our Marin County, as evidenced by the 2017 Race Count study, which found Marin to be the most segregated, racially disparate county in California, I think we want our kids to develop empathy and take an active role in contributing to just, caring, and safe communities for all of us. We create accessibility for members of our community. I'm almost done. who are disabled based on those very values, not on whether there are enough disabled students or teachers to warrant our care. In the same way, the ongoing harm done to African American community members cannot be quantified. We already have knowledge, as evidenced by tonight's comments, of that harm. I truly believe we're a community who deeply cares, especially about our children, and that by renaming the school district with a name that really reflects our shared values, we can join with others in leading the way towards more justice and equity in Marin, and join as well with the many other communities around the country that have chosen to divest themselves of symbols of the Confederate South. Thank you.
Pamela Fish.
That's me. Hi, I'm Tamala Fish. Just to be clear what side I'm on. I have extras if anybody wants one over here too. I am a homeowner in San Rafael. My son is 15 and is now going to a special program in San Marin. I'm very proud of him. I did not come to Dixie School, but I did come from another school that changed its name and survived. My son's school used to be called St. Mark's, and now it's called Mark Day. That happened 3 years ago. I'm just going to repeat it real slowly again so everybody can take it in for a minute. St. Mark's changed their name to Mark Day 3 years ago. Everybody survived. Everybody. Why did they do that? Because the name really didn't showcase what the school was anymore. It was a good school. It is a good school. Dixie was and is a great school. Everybody knows that. Nothing in this change the name is about the school itself. But you know what? It could be a better school. It could be a better school for all the reasons the people before me have spoken. Because whether you're aware of it or not, Marin County is the most racially segregated and disparate county in the entire state of California. And you know what? We're not going to be able to hide that in this room. People know that. It's out there. We're worse than Orange County. Let that kind of sink in for a second. Right? And why is that? How does that happen? It happens in little tiny ways like this, where there's a school name named Dixie, and it's a great school. But how many black teachers, how many excellent black students, how many diverse kids are you going to get in here with a name like Dixie? Do you really have to think that it's easy for people of a different history than yours to just simply forget it, overcome it, and just go ahead and go with it because you don't want to spend, $5 more in getting to New Jersey? The money isn't the problem. I understand this has been tried twice before, and they actually came up with all the money. So the money is just an excuse. All right? You know what's not an excuse? You know why I'm here, even though my son went to Mark Day? I saw it. I'll be quick. Thank you very much for understanding. I do social media for a living. I'm not even going to tell you the comments, but this gentleman who stood up earlier, when you see what's written about this name change on Facebook, when you see what's written about this on Nextdoor, you should be ashamed. You should be sickened. Your children are going to school in a place and read these comments. What are you doing to them? Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I haven't seen you in a while. I'm Ruth Carter. I've been a resident of Marinwood for 36 years. I'm actually on the oversight committee for Measure B for the Dixie School District. And when I say that name, it sort of catches in my throat. I'm not going to repeat what other people said, but I do want to make a few points. Some of the comments on Nextdoor talked about, oh, this is just about political correctness. I don't think it is. I think this is about the prevalence of racism in our society, much of which is underneath and is not spoken about openly. We have an opportunity to make a change now, not to rewrite history, but to right a wrong from our dark past.
I am a first-generation American. My parents were escapees from the Holocaust, and a lot of their family was wiped out during the Holocaust. How would you feel if your school district was called Auschwitz School District? I would be appalled, and I think we should all be appalled about something like this school district, which is a wonderful group of people and teachers and principals and school board, to have that name as an albatross around their neck. I urge you, I beg you, please right this wrong now. Thank you.
Good evening. I moved to Marin 42 years ago because my parents wanted me to be in a better school district. We lived in Richmond, and I'm raising my kids here now. In Marin, we believe in community, in inclusion, in safety for families, individuals, and children. The name Dixie has many negative connections, as you've heard already, conjuring up the enslavement of African Americans and other racist practices, policies, and ideas. I ask you to imagine that someone has just used a terribly offensive and repulsive name to refer to you or someone that you love. Imagine that when you try to talk to them about it, about the hurt, the pain, the suffering, and anger you feel, they merely say that wasn't their intention. Does their intention change how you feel? Does it change the impact that this has on you? Not likely. Please imagine the impact the name Dixie has on our community. The name and impact are not in alignment with our community values. Therefore, I ask you to really take this seriously. It's not about money, it's about people, it's about who we want to be as a community, that we all want to support each other and say, racism has no place here, names and symbols mean things, please change the name. Thank you.
Hi. I'm a resident and taxpayer in the Dixie School District. The Dixie name evokes nostalgia and myth. When my husband Clifford Gould and I bought our house in 2002, we were informed of the myth that this coveted name, Dixie, made our home worth infinitely more than one with a more pedestrian name like Tam Union, pun intended. The myth to me brought cognitive dissonance. When I was told that a school and a school district in Northern California carried the name Dixie, I was shocked. I grew up in the South. I spent 28 years in Texas. I sang Dixie at pep assemblies and thought nothing of it. It was just a fun, upbeat song. Years later, I came to understand the meaning of, in Dixie land, I'll take my stand to live and die in Dixie. I'm sure there are others who are even now as naive, as oblivious, as untouched by the meaning as I was as a child. That is not to call them racists. However, among those who even now claim that the Dixie name is harmless, benign, named after a girl, etc., when informed that there is no historical record supporting that alternative history, and there is sufficient evidence that the name in fact refers to the Confederate States of America, they fall back on nostalgia, money, and myth. There is no magic conferred by the name Dixie, which makes the teaching illustrious and the students brilliant, athletic, and successful. The school district will continue to thrive under any name as long as its parents, teachers, and board maintain their current commitment to excellence. As Shakespeare said, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So what is the reason for changing the name of this rose? The question is one of benefit versus harm. No one particularly benefits from the name Dixie, but many whose associations with the name recall a place in which thousands fought to keep the rights and privileges of owning other people, which included the right to overwork, to starve, to imprison, to torture, to rape, and even to kill those owned will suffer when seated in a house which recalls, honors, and glorifies that place. Not only those children who are descendants of slaves, but other children and other homeowners who are pained and ashamed when asked to associate themselves with that name, who recognize they were still dealing with the legacy of slavery. The only harm which anyone can claim from changing the name is one of finance, but when challenged with the possibility that funds can be raised privately, those insisting on the old name fall back on nostalgia and myth. It's time to embrace compassion over commerce, to recognize history over hype, to step up to the plate and do the right thing. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alex Morales. I'm a graduate of Vallecito and Miller Creek. I believe that the Dixie School District must change its name in order for it to live up to its motto of moving ahead for our student success. With the name Dixie, the district will forever be shackled to the horrors of the Confederacy. Nothing can wear the name of Dixie and not carry with it the shame of slavery or institutional racism that has persisted to this day. By choosing not to rename the school district, each of you is choosing to embrace the racist and white supremacist ideals associated with Dixie. For those who will see the association between the term Dixie and racism as a stretch, or just Google image search the word Dixie, and you will see the vile world the term continues to represent today. Middle school and high school students like me are coming of age in a time period where white supremacists march holding Confederate flags, the symbol of Dixie, while singing the racist Dixie song to show their allegiance to their racist ideals. I know we have all seen the footage. Some are choosing to remain ignorant of the world we live in. As a person of color, being able to ignore racism is not a privilege I have, nor one I wish to possess. I want to be on the right side of history, and among those leading change. The question now becomes, will you choose ignorance over action? Are you willing to use your power and privilege to change the name and lead the community in the hard work of ending racism? Thank you.
Patty Bender.
I have two things I'd like to talk about, so I'll try and make my first comments brief, which are about the name change. I disagree with a large portion of the people here, and I think that this should be decided by the people that live here and not by people from outside. So however we choose to do that, I really agree with a lot with what Nick has said before, and the woman sitting next to him, I can't remember her name, but again, I don't believe that the name should be changed for various reasons. I believe we teach inclusion and equity, and I don't believe the name is something we need to focus on. But the other thing I'd like to talk about is what is going on. I keep hearing by one particular board member the word transparency. I hear it over and over again out of this board member's mouth. And then what we see on Facebook and then on the news is them representing themselves as a Dixie School Board member and saying, and it looks like to the public, that this is the entire Dixie School, that she's speaking for the Dixie School District, and she's not. Marnie Glickman, you talk about transparency over and over again, but since July, you have been on your Facebook, you've been on Twitter, you've been stirring the pot, getting all these people together, and then you went on the news on Friday night with the word Dixie School Board under your name. You are elected by your constituents to represent them. And I'm pretty sure what I've been hearing in the community is you're not representing all of them.
To be an ally against racism?
Excuse me, you're not supposed to speak.
Sorry.
I respected you. I didn't speak up when anybody else was speaking, so I expect the same respect. So if you choose to have your name out there, do not put it with the Dixie School District. It is not, that's not why you were put in office. And I know a lot of people would like to see you removed from office right now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Mercy Chu.
not used to these meetings or anything, but the issue came up and I wanted to say my piece. And I think there are strong opinions on both sides, and I understand that people have very strong feelings towards the name. I'm concerned with the practicality of it all. My son was diagnosed with autism when he was 4, and we went to the public school system to find out that he was not able to get the help because funds are limited and that he has to meet really, really tight requirements in order to get that help. So I feel like if this name change is so important that other people would want to put their money towards this, all for it. And I don't want anybody to feel not included. I'm Asian American. I completely understand issues of racism, and I don't want anyone to feel that their opinion is not important. I have opinions too, but I do think that the money is an issue, and I just would like the board to really come to a point where they would be able to put it to a vote for the residents that pay the taxes and want to, help allocate the money in the right way. But yeah, everybody's vote would matter in that sense, and that's all I wanted to say.
Paul Brunel.
Hey guys. So I had some stuff prepared, and I'm kind of glad I listened and I'm going later because I want to change what I was going to say. Or not change, but just alter it a little bit. I've lived here for 20 years. My kids have gone through the district. They're both at Terralinda now. And I know that there are people who have lived here for 20, 30, 40, 50 years who are second, third generation. Their parents, their grandparents were teachers, students, et cetera, et cetera. Full disclosure, my national politics lean pretty hard to the left. So what's interesting is that I probably agree on a national level with a lot of people who are speaking here. It's just that on this issue, I don't. And my concern is, when I see what happened on Nextdoor last week, which there was a lot of mudslinging both ways, my concern here is that there's a wedge issue now being driven into this community that wasn't here before. I don't know what's going to happen, but it saddens me to watch this issue come up in a community that doesn't deserve to be framed in a certain way. I understand people want to seize on the Trump effect, right? I get it. But to try to frame that down into this community is wrong, in my opinion. That's not who we've been. We're not in some place where trucks are driving around with Yosemite Sam stickers on it, firing their gun with a Confederate flag. That's not what Marinwood Terralinda is. It's not what it's ever been, from what I understand. So, do we really want to march down a road of spending potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars, or whatever it ends up being, and I disagree that money's not an issue. It's an issue. We've got real problems in the school district now. We've got kids hooked on vaping and juuling in Miller Creek. My daughter said that half of the kids that she graduated from Miller Creek with are hooked on vaping and juuling. It's getting worse. Do we want to spend the money, the time, the effort on something like this, or do we want to help the kids who are there now? My opinion is we help the kids now. Noah, I don't know you, but that quote about this being a Confederate stronghold or a Confederate outpost, that's really offensive to me, and I'm a liberal. Okay, I'm a liberal, that's offensive to me. And it's offensive to a lot of the people who grew up here and who are second and third generation. So what I see is a lot of dividing, not uniting. And whatever happens will happen, but I really worry about this issue boiling over and becoming a line in the sand being drawn that if you're not for this petition or you're not for this name change, you're bad. you support racism. No, please, no, don't do that. Don't label me or anybody else as having white privilege or being racist just because I don't necessarily support the name change. Please, we have better things to be doing.
Good evening, everyone. I see a lot of great teachers and friends here in this room. So this is my first time to speak publicly, and forgive me if I'm a little nervous. Put my glasses on since I can't see. Since racism has been asserted here, I agree that slavery and Jim Crow were one of the worst evils perpetrated by human beings. It is truly evil. But the question now is, we have people living here in our neighborhood who have not committed those sins. Do we somehow remove or punish our community for the sins of their fathers? And is it the best thing to do is to teach our entire generation of minorities, blacks, Asians, or whatever, that America is racist? I don't feel that. Are they bigoted? I don't think so. I've never felt it. I've been living here since been coming here in the States since I was in 5th grade. My kids don't feel it. The insinuation that minorities are perpetual victims hurts them. I believe it's false. It's backwards. As a Catholic Filipino, we have a long history of oppression. For 300 years, we were oppressed by Spaniards. My parents were involved. I mean, my grandparents. I'm not that old. And we have a long history of oppression, even by the Japanese people. And I have plenty of Japanese friends. I even love their food. People of every race and color were enslaved and enslaved by others. In fact, white people were still being bought and sold as slaves in the Ottoman Empire, decades after blacks were freed. Does this mean that as a community should expect that we're owed? I don't think so. Does it mean that I want everything and anything removed that is influenced by King Philip? I don't think so. Should I feel threatened, offended about a Japanese battleship named after our superintendent? I don't think so. Is it appropriate to teach our children that somebody owes you something as a general rule that has not done anything to you? I think that if we have done something to you, then they owe you. But if they haven't done anything to you, then they don't owe you anything. And if you build an ideological system based on you have to rectify mistakes made by your grandfather, then we're never going to get past this. We'll never get beyond it.
Armand?
Yes.
So we'll over 2 minutes.
Oh, 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Well, just close it up.
Then that's it. I just want to say, I disagree with this. I think this is a great community, and I appreciate everybody's time.
Representing the contingents of Dixie soccer dads back there. I'm actually the centrist among them. I should point out that you're seeing opposition to this idea from both the left and the right, literally back there with Paul and Armin. Anyway, my name's Peter Henry. I'm a Dixie dad. I've lived here for 15 years in the neighborhood, still live here in the neighborhood. My daughters went through the district. And here's the interesting thing. I just want to make a couple of personal observations about this issue and then a pragmatic one to sort of cement the perspective on this. First of all, I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland, right above the Mason-Dixon line. My dad marched with MLK. So I do have some clue about what it means to be part of a group that has experienced discrimination and moved on from it. So In 2003, when my wife and I moved to the district, it never even dawned on me that Dixie was that Dixie. Just never dawned on me. And the reason was that I was raised to think different. That I got to see firsthand the speech where MLK said, we're looking forward, he looked forward to a time where people were judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. In other words, what we think, not necessarily what is said. And I get and understand personally that there are some expressions and some terms that are more currently offensive or acrimonious. But that's not the point here. The point here is that since moving here, this has been nothing but a welcoming and open community. And that's who we are in 2018. That's who we were in 2003 when we moved here. This is not 1864, and it's not 1964 even. This is 2018. And this community reflects the liberal and accepting and open and welcoming ideals that we would hope to live in. So now, what does that mean then? And I'll observe one interesting thing about the folks who are in favor of this name change. They put together a website in which they put a quote that I find very ironic by Maya Angelou, and I'll just read it quickly. We cannot change the past, but we can change our attitude toward it, uproot guilt and plant forgiveness, tear out arrogance and seed humility, exchange love for hate, thereby making the present comfortable and the future promising. Why is that ironic? Because she wasn't talking about words. She was talking about how we think and how we act. So now, the pragmatic point. The one thing I do know after 15 years here is that the district is constantly in a budget crunch. Has anyone stopped to think about what we can do with the resources, with the money, because this is 2018, not some other time, to actually help our students more? Think about it. A rough calculation of this name change would run into the tens of thousands of dollars. If anyone thinks that that doesn't make a difference to this district and to our kids, they're mistaken. So for that, for the pragmatic reason and for the personal reason about who this community is, this community, not outsiders telling us what we should think, but this community from the inside is, I'm strongly opposed to putting our resources to this effort at this point. Thank you.
Oh, I put my name in.
Oh, you're correct. Sorry, I didn't realize we were speaking to both issues. 2 minutes this time.
Well, I'm going to start off by telling you I went to the Sausalito Art Festival, and I saw the most beautiful piece of art. It's in your heart, and that's where I want to speak to right now. That's where the Almighty Kingdom resolves. And loudly I proclaim by the authority of the Great Spirit Almighty Adonai Elohim to damn the profusions of illusions. Racism is what human beings do to the other sentient races. And no one is more hopelessly enslaved than those who believe themselves to be free. And all wars are usurious bankers' wars. And we're told, at least in part, that that had something to do with freeing the slaves. And if that's true, how many Caucasians died? So let's not make this about color of skin. We're all the same race in this room. If we had a whale and a horse, it'd be 3 races. You know, there's a shining angel named Satan who maintains deceptions and hate, and he wants people to be divided and ashamed and all those kind of things. That's not who we are. We're the most powerful people on the planet. You're in one of the most blessed places on the planet. They say Israel is the promised land, and it's true, but it's not a speck of dust across the sea. It's also known as Ariel, which means the world. America represents the world, and Northern California, pardon my French, is the shit. We are it. Northern California, in the heart of the promised land, is the North Bay. And there's really true reasons for all this. We're all slaves to lawyers and bankers serving mammon. Serving 2 masters maintains all disasters, and Sataniel's backgammon. I've shared with you about the freedom for Leonard Peltier. His bloodlines are of the Tsalagi, the lost tribe of the city of David, the Cherokee. And the moment he's set free by our 40-day strike, which walks our own children into the promised land, it frees the U.S. Constitution, which is a beautiful document. I could spend an hour on it.
That's 2 minutes, Peter.
I'll finish with this. As you do, language is important, and like I explained, race, and as you do unto the least of me, you do unto me, was a statement given to the by the great carpenter sage. And that was always about animals. I am Peter, I am keeper of the keys, so too the command placing the world to its knees. The power is in our heart. We have no strikes in this country worth talking about since 1970, and certainly not one for freedom, because none of us are free, we never have been. But we have this time and place with a smile on our face by an almighty command to take the promised land by the 40-day mystical, magical walk that opens the whole deal. So I'm here to seal the deal and make it real. I can only do it with more than just your appeal. It's got to be your heart and an almighty action, because we are the most beautiful faction. Thank you for blessing me with your time again.
Okay. Tara Costello.
Hi again, guys. I'm going to speak as an individual and not as the Dixie Teachers Association president, but I wanted to just say that I had the honor and privilege to go to the National Educators Association Representative Assembly this summer. I was elected to go, and I just wanted to read one of the resolutions that we passed. This is with about 10,000 educators from across the country who were all also elected to go, and I just wanted to read one of the resolutions that was passed. White supremacy culture. The National Education Association believes that in order to achieve racial and social justice, educators must acknowledge the existence of white supremacy culture as a primary root cause of institutional racism, structural racism, and white privilege. Additionally, the association believes that the norms, standards, and organizational structures manifested in white supremacy culture perpetually exploit and oppress people of color and serve as detriments to racial justice. Further, the invisible racial benefits of white privilege, which are automatically conferred irrespective of wealth, gender, and other factors, severely limit opportunities for people of color and impede full achievement of racial and social justice. Therefore, the association will actively advocate for social and educational strategies fostering the eradication of institutional racism and white privilege perpetuated by white supremacy culture. And that was just a resolution that was passed that I thought should be read into these minutes for today. So, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ruby Wilson, and I grew up in the South, in the segregated South, went to segregated schools and segregated places. Went on to college and university and moved to California in 1971. Moved here to Marinwood, so I've been here longer than I think most of you. So in 1971 we moved here. And the reason we moved here is that my husband was offered a job, and he came out and bought the house in Marinwood before I even saw it. So I came to a house that I hadn't seen before. But long story short is that I have 3 grown children who attended schools here in the Dixie School District. I have been in education, taught here in the county. Over 30 years I've been an educator and a principal. When we bought the house, I had no idea that the name of the school district was Dixie. I don't think I would have allowed, and I use that term strongly, my husband to buy a house in the Dixie School District. But he bought it, he didn't know it either. So it wasn't until I came here that I realized that it was called the Dixie School District. And I would like to very much support changing the name. And as one of the speakers said, to change your name does not change the system. Another thing that I have observed is that when I'm looking in the paper and I see houses up for sale
they say, in the distinguished Dixie School District. I have informed all 3 of my grown children that when I'm gone and they decide to sell my house, do not say it is in the Dixie School District. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank everybody, all the speakers for tonight. Thanks for coming, both sides, and informing us. And we'll take it to our next step here. So, and again, I appreciate the feedback and the passion with which everybody presented today. So thanks for taking the time to come to our meeting. Okay, so we'll move on to the organizational matters, the superintendent's recommended updates to board goals.
This is meant to be actually just an introductory item so that the board can see some of the recommendations, ask any clarifying questions, but we will have a board workshop on the goals at a future agenda. I'll pause just a moment because people have been here for a while and allow people who need to go. Yeah, I'm going to wait a minute.
Thank you. Probably has to be put it into.
Someone not here.
Somebody not here.
There's still a lot going on you don't want to miss. Okay, so let's see. So the information.
Yeah. So this is information for the board to sort of have in advance, to be able to ask some questions about in advance of the actual board workshop on goals, which will be upcoming. In reviewing that, just a reminder that the board had previously been working with 4 goal areas, and that in our work last year, we renamed those areas, and they are improve student learning, build connectedness, strengthen infrastructure, and attract, retain, and support an outstanding diverse staff. I'm recommending that we keep those 4 focus areas for our goals as we go into 18-19. The same, I think they articulate, after my year of learning within the district, I think they articulate well the work that we're doing and kind of where we are mentally with our work in the school district. I am recommending some changes in the specific goals, and there's generally 3 or 4 goals in each of those areas. In the improved student learning area, I'm recommending that we have a goal related to developing and implementing our locally developed assessment plan. This work started and forced by the teaching group in the spring with Judy Arrow and I. Tracy took over as we entered the summer. Tracy and I worked together with our curriculum council lead teachers, and teachers have been very enthusiastic about this work. It's not because they love giving students tests all the time. So I always want to be clear when we're talking about the assessment, the teachers really want to be on top of student learning. They really want to be able to talk with each other about progress and challenges with student learning. And they recognized that as we transitioned to the Common Core, there was a real struggle as we left certain tests behind, and they weren't replaced. And so they really wanted to get back to some core assessments that we did together, including writing assessments, having a commitment to the math assessments, and having a data system and an inquiry team system where teachers could talk with each other about how student learning was progressing. So there's a lot of things wrapped up into this goal, but that's an important one for us. Also, a change is related to a focus on independent reading. Last year we had a focus on Wonders and Amplify implementation. Obviously it takes more than 1 year to implement a new ELA program, so it's not as if that work isn't happening. But one of the things that came out of our discussions in the English language arts area was a strong desire to focus in on independent reading between, particularly the 1st and 8th grade level. And so we have work that's happening related to that. The other two goals are continuations from last year, expanding the effective use of instructional technology to continue that work. And as I mentioned last year, one of the areas that we weren't able to delve into enough last year, partly because our lack of data on student progress, was accelerated achievement growth for students that were below level. I believe we'll be able to do much more effective work this year in that area with the new assessment system. On the build connectedness, you may notice that I've shifted over one of our goals from last year around social and emotional learning programs and measurable growth into that area.
Sorry to interrupt you, but if we're going to go one by one, so if you're going to do the look at the local assessments and have a plan, it would be helpful to us if we could see the formative and summative assessments that are being used, which ones have been abandoned, and which ones are being recommended. Because right now, over the last 2 years, there's been so much movement that we're not sure of what's and which formative ones have been dropped. So that would be helpful.
Yeah, we did talk about that at the agenda setting meeting a little bit, and we said that we would do a presentation within the next couple of meetings in relation to that, to update the board on it.
And then on the independent reading piece for the English language arts learners, so talking about a program like that, I think we had recommended before that we look at Santa Fe City Schools because of their experience with a large population of English language learners and folks that they've been working with for a number of years in our lower population, and maybe do some compare and contrasting between the two districts as well.
Yeah, and of course, for those who are not aware, we're really fortunate to have Elizabeth Four as our principal at Vallecito, not only because she's going to be an amazing principal, but also because she's been the person the last couple of years that's been in charge of professional development at the K-8 level in Santa Fe, and also in leading the coaching group there. So she's been bringing a lot of knowledge to us and interfacing with us, and also creating a bridge for those discussions.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes, so just noting that we moved the SEL goal across, the social emotional learning goal across. We do still have quite a bit of work to do around that. I think our principal leadership and teacher leadership is very excited about the social emotional learning work that's happened over the years, but definitely feels like we have more work to do. We did not achieve our goal of setting measurable goals last year. We'd like to be able to move forward on some goals in that area, but last year we struggled a little bit about where to put it, and I think there is a feeling that we'd like to see that in the connectedness. Again, there could be some debate about that, but that's my recommendation is that we have it in that category this year. The other two are largely the same, except I want to note on the internal and external communications. Last year I had a goal of explore, so it was basically to try some new things. This year I think the goal is to improve. So last year we did try some new things. This year we really want to tighten that up. I think you're seeing schools getting definitely more serious about the school websites. During this year we'll be really looking at the district website. There's also been some other communication pieces that we're working on for improvements, and we can talk about that.
Excellent.
On the strengthened infrastructure, we still have the 10% reserve for economic uncertainty on there. I believe that we made good progress on that last year. However, as noted from the previous couple board meetings, the budget is continuing to evolve and is in flux, and we were going to be right along that borderline, and so we think that it's critical that we have that. And I know the board's also had some discussion about whether or not that target is the appropriate target. And that's also something that we could discuss as we set goals for this year. But for right now, since we haven't hit it in the last several years, I'm recommending that still be the target. For infrastructure, we're still in the middle of the bond work. So I've added the Miller Creek work there because this summer is our plan to get to Miller Creek on the bond work internally. So that's listed, but I've also have to complete the modernization work because, as I mentioned, that work's gone right up to the start of the year. We need to make sure that everything related to our work at Vallecito and Mary Silvera is also finished quite well. So I've listed both of those there for our work. Then on attract and retain, there's a shift there focused on support right at the top. We've talked about how many new hires there have been, and so I've listed that right at the top of the attract and retain. Continuing to prioritize staff compensation in the budget process. It's been a priority in the district, and the board's really demonstrated their commitment to that in this past year. And then expand internal professional development structure. This one's a bit new, and it has a lot to do with the discussions that we've had over the past, particularly the second half of last year and into the start of this year through the summer. Just the strong belief that we have a lot of internal talent and that we have some structures in place but could continue to add more so that we can really learn from each other and structure professional development internally. It's a lot more cost effective, and it really brings up the talent that we have. So I want to make a commitment to that for this year and build on that. It's not to say that we haven't already done some of that in Dixie. There is a lot of that happening, but I think that we can do even more.
Is there a return to PLC available, or how would you
yeah.
do that?
Yeah, there is a return to PLC. We are rebranding PLC within the district. And that's I mentioned inquiry teams in the assessment. So we are looking at calling them inquiry teams, but it is still the grade levels or the departments.
Same
department
questions.
grade levels.
How do we know?
Very similar structures in terms of looking at student learning.
And they're called inquiry teams?
We're going to call them inquiry teams. Yeah, we had a little internal debate about data teams or inquiry teams. We decided to focus on inquiry with that focus on questioning, curiosity, and learning, and less about just the numbers of the data. So, inquiry teams.
Well, I know this is, you're just kind of framing the structure of what we're going to be talking about.
Yes.
But, you know, right off the top of my head, I'd love to have regular feedback about how those assessments are going, and even from teachers as well, of how they're utilizing that information.
Yeah.
Maybe at the time we had it before, Wednesdays, the ones that aren't, the non-professional days, the ones that are being worked out for sorting. And when it's being done, it'd always be good to get an invite to sit in those. We have in the past. I don't think we've done it in the last few years.
Okay.
But to be able to sit at some of the grade level tables and see some of the sorting happen and understand it. So I'm sure your inquiry teams must be working across the grade levels to address how you sort and how do you do differentiated learning and the different parts of how that.
That'll be part of what we do. The beginning of it, just to be clear, getting kind of into the weeds a little bit here, but this is something that has not been happening consistently over the last few years, and we're rebuilding it.
Okay.
So it's going to move a little bit slowly, not because we don't think our teachers can handle it, but because our curriculum council teacher leaders agree with us that we should work together so that we have strong teams and everybody understands what they're doing. So I definitely think it would be fine for board members to come into the teams. It's not necessarily always sorting students. Like I said, the inquiry teams will be tackling different questions in a structured way and thinking about how students are learning, what they're learning, and how to improve that. And that you're right that would fit into both that goal one and this last goal. Just structurally, just a quick overview and then additional questions or clarifications from the board. It's keeping largely the same structure of trying to have a few goals in each goal area, keeping the same 4 focus areas, and keeping some goals as the same, and changing some other ones based on my perception of the needs of the district and admin's feedback as well. So I don't know if there's other additional clarifying questions, and then when we have the workshop, we'll have a facilitation with feedback and ideas from each individual board member as we've done before. If there's something that really sticks out, part of the reason of doing this tonight, though, I do want to mention is that for my preparation to support the board in that workshop, if there's something that you've been thinking about a lot as a core goal area that you don't see here, feel free to share that tonight so that it's something that we can wrestle with and figure out how to include as much as possible in that discussion.
Well, I have an idea I'd like to share. When I was thinking about build connectedness, I was thinking about our conversation last year and how it's vague and important at the same time. And I was wondering, I was going to suggest that we discuss at the workshop adding building connectedness through improving equity and inclusion in our school district.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I think that I did understand your idea on building connectedness, how you would build up a SMART goal for that. So I think that it would be good to sunshine that with the board through some prep documents,
okay,
so that we're clear, because that seems pretty, you're measuring rainbows there partially, right? As far as like, you know, hard to say what it is.
But
so
SMART goals.
Yeah, and I know what a SMART goal is, but I'm saying that
gotcha.
in essence, that we would really like some qualifications into how you quantify that and what you think are going to be some of your tools to do that, and then how you'll know that you've been successful once you've done it would be great. So that, if you're going to throw that out, I'd like to see that. And then on a side note, the bond piece, the building infrastructure, there hasn't been a moment to give feedback in public, but you came to us expressing that this was one of the areas that you potentially might need more help on. And quite honestly, I think that you've done an above average and two excellent job managing the bond since you've been here. So I just wanted to publicly announce that, you know, we've had no issues. All the leaseback options that we had that could have been contentious, you dealt with, and what you did over summer to be able to bring the schools and our rental properties up to readiness above and before the deadlines was really incredible. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you for work.
You're welcome. And that's on that. The other parts are, we used to have SMART goals built into this. I think again, we simplifying's good, but I hear an expansion coming from you with this right now.
I do appreciate what you're saying with in relation to that, and there were other board members that mentioned goals last year. I appreciate your patience with me in my first year and really not quite ready to get to SMART goals in some of these areas, but I know that that's something that was mentioned last year that we could take a closer look at this year.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks. Go for it.
Okay. Well, thanks for that update and that framework, because that's why we're here. So it gives us some good pre-thoughts so we can kind of hit the ground running. Okay, discussion regarding second meeting date in September to consider approval of the unaudited actuals financial report. I think we just talked about.
Did we get the fourth Tuesday, the 25th? Is that right?
Yes.
Is that the right date?
Yeah, I'm not sure, let me look at the.
That would be good because I'm gone on the 26th. So.
And be good if it works for Tanya.
25th.
25th.
Tuesday the 25th.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it's okay with the board, we're going to survey you about the whether that will work as a board workshop date as well, or whether or not we want to set a separate date for the workshop.
Okay.
And how long are you thinking the workshop will be?
I think it'll be about an hour this time.
That might be a good, we can all block that out.
So I want to mention, so we're in real time here around workshops. In the history, 13 years having been here, we've never conducted a workshop without all 5 board members there. They're that important. So that if we can't get, if someone's missing for whatever reason, I think at that point we have to find another date. They're so rare and in between that if we're going to have one, part of the reason they're rare is because it gives us an opportunity to work on typically 1 or 2 subjects only over a 3 or 4 hour period, and that's rare in every year to be able to do that. So if we can't have one of us, it's hard to build consensus without that ability. Yep. So just I caution us not to do 4 or 3 person board workshops in the future.
So yeah, so Jan, if you can just have it confirm it with everybody. Everybody's okay, just mark it in right now and Jan will.
What time are we talking about?
Wait,
Well,
so
this
we're,
is the
we're
when-
confirming a date?
We're not confirming a date right now, but Jane will confirm a date related to workshop. The 25th will be one of the proposed dates, but of course that'll be a regular evening meeting. So board members will need to reflect on whether they believe that will be the right fit for them for a workshop, and if not, there'll be some other proposed times. Mark's just suggesting that when we plan it, if we need to push it back, we make sure that we find a time that everybody can be there.
Since we're talking about logistics, I appreciate the desire to do it within 1 hour, but I'm just wondering if we want to be in order for us to be a little bit more expansive and creative and innovative, we might need more than 60 minutes.
I understand.
I would be willing to commit more than 60 minutes to the board goal development for the school year.
I actually agree with that. We've in the past have spent 2-3 hours on board goals. So.
And if it's financials, right, and then that's the financial part of it, and we can lock that down.
Right.
That works. Does that make sense to everybody?
Are you asking again for us to agree?
I'm asking just to get your mind going and saying, hey, that could probably work. And then Jane can block out that time, and what we say, we block out, 6 to 8 at least. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Community activities. Anybody want to have something that you want to share?
With what's come up, or are we doing past here?
This is community activities which are coming up, so not meetings reported,
Or
but
your future looking.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So I know there's the Chambers hosting the Welcome New Teacher event on October 10th at Toyota Marin, and I think we'll probably have one of our biggest showings that we've had in quite some time. And that's always a good way to kind of get to be able to meet the new teachers and really make them feel part of the community. And a variety of schools in Marin, or in San Rafael be represented, not only San Rafael and us, but some of the private schools as well. So I think it's a good community event.
It's a great event.
Back to school night.
Yeah, back to school night tomorrow night. Run as one. End of this
Run as
month.
one.
Get us some exercise together. Have a
30th?
fun can-do event.
All right. That's on the 30th, Sunday the 30th. Okay, this is something that might be of interest to people. Indian Valley campus for College of Marin is doing a groundbreaking ceremony in September, late September. And this is for the new aquatic and fitness center and their farm facilities and classrooms. It's a barbecue being hosted by Nugget. But you can see where a lot of their bond money went to. So just thought I'd pass that on. Something I shared with the Education Committee for San Rafael earlier today. So if anybody wants to attend. Okay, reports by board members on meetings attended. I know our year just started, but maybe there's some meetings that might be of interest to share.
Well, open house for middle school was amazing.
That was great.
The rooms look great. There was a lot of enthusiasm. I want to go back to middle school.
Marin County Office of Ed is doing the candidates forums for new trustees in the county. And so that's hosted by Lozano Smith, who is our legal team, and they're doing a really good job.
Just want to give a shout out to our homeschool clubs that are doing the ice cream socials.
Oh, yeah?
2 of them have already happened. They were very well attended and were fantastic events. And thanks to Silverman's for the great ice cream.
Silverman's, a long-time sponsor.
That's good.
Any other meetings? Okay. Let's go to identification of items for future agenda. I have one. I don't want to be all me talking, but especially in light of today, I think as a board, we need to know our role and responsibilities of the evaluation of the name change from a legal perspective, from what those steps are, just so we have the education as one, so we obviously can be better educated aside from what we heard tonight. So I think that's something that'll be important for us moving forward.
So on the agenda with legal representation presenting?
I would imagine.
Or
I mean, if
yes.
that might be some consulting that you'd want to do ahead of time to see how we could get the most information the way that we need to.
Yeah, I'd like to have legal counsel here.
Okay. Anything else? Hey, motion for adjournment?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
All right, thanks for staying till the end.
I have a question.